You know how it is the wellness world throws a new must-try at us like every week?
Mm.
And lately, intermittent fasting has been absolutely everywhere, promises everything.
Yeah, the promises are huge.
But is it really tapping into some deep, like, ancestral biology?
Mhm.
Or is it just the latest biohack for, performance junkies?
That is exactly the question. That's
Yeah.
what we're really trying to unpack today. We've gone through a fair bit of research on intermittent fasting, IOF, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And the goal is to give you a really clear picture, the mechanisms, the history, but also, crucially, who does this actually help?
Yay.
And who might it just, well, stress out?
Exactly. Our sources really dig into the nitty-gritty, looking at, the difference between just shrinking your eating window, that popular 168 thing.
Yeah, time-restricted feeding.
Right, TRF. And then those more intense, like multi-day fasts. Big difference.
Huge difference. And we're also going to get into how fasting plays with our hormones, the big ones.
Mm,
Insulin, cortisol, thyroid, leptin. That's critical. Yeah.
it really is. And what's cool is how it links back to stuff we've talked about before.
Totally. Like how giving your gut a break, through fasting
Mm-hmm.
can influence the gut-brain axis. We talked about that in microbiome and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And also how these fasting periods might actually change the gut environment itself.
Yeah,
Builds right on our microbial shapeshifters discussion.
right. And it's not just when we eat, it connects to what we eat too. Like how fasting could maybe work with diets lower in those anti-nutrients we covered.
Yeah, giving the gut a double break, potentially.
And remember our microbiome myth chat, how fasting might push the microbiome towards being more resilient, more adaptable, not just, diverse for diversity's sake.
Spot on. Functional resilience, that's the key idea. And we'll even touch on histamine again, how fasting might affect mast cells.
Oh, interesting.
And fiber, too. Fasting is naturally zero fiber, right? Supports the idea that constant high fiber isn't maybe the only way.
Okay, so lots of threads weaving together. Let's start then. Different ways people fast. TRF versus the longer ones. What's actually happening differently inside us?
Okay, so TRF, time-restricted feeding, I think 168, maybe 1410. That's more like a daily rhythm adjustment.
Aligning with your body clock.
Ideally, yeah. Especially if you shift that eating window earlier in the day.
Yeah.
The benefits, often better insulin response, maybe better blood pressure, helps some with weight. It's generally more sustainable.
And does it trigger those deeper processes like ketosis?
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
Mild ketosis, maybe some gentle autophagy kicking in,
Right.
but usually less intense than with longer fasts. It's
Oh.
more of a consistent nudge.
Okay, so TRF is the daily rhythm setter. What about the big guns? 24 hours, 36 multiple days? That sounds way more intense.
It is a much bigger physiological event, no question. Because you're going longer without any nutrients, that's when you see more potent autophagy. Real cellular cleanup.
Right, the self-eating thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And deeper ketosis.
Yeah.
You might see more significant impacts on cellular regeneration, maybe immune resetting in really long fasts, potentially bigger shifts in inflammation.
And weight loss, presumably.
Yeah, potentially more significant weight loss and metabolic changes for some people with longer fasts.
There's always a but. More intensity means more risk.
Absolutely. Look, TRF is pretty safe for most healthy adults. You might get some initial hunger, maybe headaches, feel a bit tired while adjusting. And timing matters. Eating super late might negate some benefits.
Okay.
But longer fasts, higher stakes, electrolyte imbalances are a real concern. Refeeding syndrome rare, but serious if you reintroduce food improperly after a long fast.
Oh, wow.
Low blood sugar is possible. Nutrient deficiencies if you do it too often without careful renourishment. It's definitely not for everyone, and sometimes needs medical eyes on it. It's a stressor.
Which makes sense ancestrally, right? TRF maybe mirrors daily food cycles, but longer fasts. That's like real scarcity.
That's a great way to think about it. And connecting to the microbiome myth, again, TRF might foster a stable, rhythmically fed microbiome, longer fasts, bigger shifts, hopefully towards that functional resilience we talked about, adapting to feast and famine.
Okay, hormones. This is where it gets complicated, I feel. You hear fasting balances hormones, but also that it can mess things up, especially for women. Insulin first.
Yeah, insulin sensitivity. Generally, the research points towards improvement with both TRF and longer fasts.
How does that work?
Well, your pancreas gets a break, right? Not pumping out insulin constantly.
Yeah.
Plus, as you use up stored glucose, your cells become more receptive to insulin when you do eat.
So helpful for things like metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes.
Definitely relevant.
Uh,
PCOS, too. And interestingly, improving insulin sensitivity often correlates with lower systemic inflammation. Remember our histamine discussion. Less inflammation can mean less histamine trouble.
okay, interesting link there. Didn't think of that. Cortisol, then, the stress hormone, big worry for people.
It is, and it's complex. Short term, yes, fasting is a stressor, so cortisol might temporarily bump up. That's normal adaptation.
But chronic stress is bad.
Exactly. If you're already highly stressed, or your HPA axis, your main stress system's out of whack, then chronic or aggressive fasting could push cortisol chronically higher.
Not good.
Not good at all. That's where the adrenal fatigue concept comes in, though it's controversial. The point is, adding a significant stressor like hardcore fasting might backfire if you're already depleted.
Right, could worsen things.
Could worsen fatigue, anxiety, sleep, and high cortisol links back to wonky immune responses, maybe worse histamine issues, even changes in the gut microbes. So gentler might be better for stressed folks.
And I hear women are often more sensitive to this cortisol effect.
There's definitely evidence pointing that way. Female hormonal systems are intricate, more sensitive to energy deficits and stressors. Doesn't mean women can't fast, but maybe shorter windows, less frequency, more attention to how they feel is needed.
Makes sense. What about thyroid? Another sensitive one.
Yeah, thyroid needs careful consideration. Prolonged fasting or very low calories can downregulate T3, the active thyroid hormone.
Why?
It's likely a protective energy-saving mechanism. Body thinks, okay, scarcity, let's slow things down.
So, bad for people with hypothyroidism.
Potentially, yes. Needs caution, definitely monitoring, ideally medical guidance. Even for healthy people, getting enough nutrients like iodine, selenium during eating windows is key for thyroid support. You don't want to suppress your thyroid and undo the metabolic benefits.
Right, counterproductive. Okay, last one. Leptin, fullness hormone. Fasting lowers it. Doesn't that make you hungrier?
It does lower leptin, yeah. But the goal often isn't just high leptin, it's leptin sensitivity.
Ah, okay. Explain that.
In obesity, for example, you often have high leptin, but the brain ignores it. That's leptin resistance. Fasting, by lowering leptin periodically, might help resensitize the brain to its signal. So when leptin does rise after eating, the brain actually listens.
Like rebooting the system.
Kind of, yeah. Helping reset those satiety cues messed up by modern diets.
No.
Reconnect with actual hunger and fullness. But if the leptin drop is too drastic or prolonged from extreme fasting, yeah, it signals a major energy deficit, can ramp up hunger, maybe even slow metabolism. It's a balance.
Wow, hormones are complicated. Okay, let's shift focus. Inside the gut, the microbiome. How does just not eating affect those trillions of microbes?
It's a huge change for them. I mean, suddenly the constant buffet is closed. So even with shorter fasts, TRF, or maybe 24, 48 hours, you see shifts. Some bacteria that rely on dietary fiber might decrease temporarily. Others, ones that can munch on, say, gut mucus, might relatively increase.
Like Akkermansia, we talked about that one.
Exactly. Akkermansia mucinifera often goes up. And that's generally seen as good linked to better gut barrier metabolic health. You might also see shifts in the firmicutes bacteroidates ratio, sometimes towards a profile linked with being leaner.
Interesting. And what about after the fast?
That's key. When you refeed, especially with the right foods, you often see a boost in short-chain fatty acid production, like butyrate. Super beneficial for gut lining health, inflammation.
So it's not wiping the slate clean, more like pruning and encouraging certain players?
That's a really good way to put it. A temporary rebalancing and diversity. Well, sometimes it dips slightly during the fast, then recovers. Sometimes it's more about the relative abundance changing.
Back to functional resilience again.
Yes. From the microbiome myth perspective, maybe it's less about just counting species and more about selecting for a community that's robust, adaptable. Fasting acts like a selective pressure. Maybe weeds out the weaker ones, allows for reset, makes the gut better at bouncing back from disruptions later.
What's driving those shifts? Just lack of food?
That's the main driver, substrate deprivation. But other things change too. Gut motility might slow, mucus production changes, our own cells release different antimicrobial peptides. Even bile acid metabolism shifts, and bile acids have huge effects on microbes.
And the links are clear. Better SCFA production, more Akkermansia, that helps the gut-brain axis.
Definitely.
Changing the environment, like we talked about with microbial shapeshifters, could nudge microbes to behave differently, maybe less inflammatory.
Precisely. It's like fasting helps the microbiome become more resilient, more adapted to those feast-famine cycles maybe our ancestors experienced. But remember, dynamic process. Refeeding is super important in shaping the final outcome.
Okay, this leads perfectly into combining fasting with how we eat. You mentioned low carb before. What about combining fasting with diets that are also meant to be easy on the gut, low fiber, low anti-nutrient? Is there synergy there?
Great question. And yes, potentially. Combining fasting with, say, a low-fiber, low-anti-nutrient, maybe even keto or carnivore approach, it could offer some overlapping benefits.
Okay, how so? What are the synergies?
Well, first, profound gut rest, right? Fasting is complete rest. Following it with a diet that's also low in digestive burden, less fiber to ferment, fewer potential plant irritants extends that period of low gut stress. Could be really helpful for healing, reducing inflammation.
Makes sense. Less work for the gut overall.
Then there's ketosis. Low-carb diets promote it, fasting deepens it. Combining them can really accelerate fat burning, enhance that metabolic flexibility, switching fuels easily.
Like a metabolic double whammy.
Kinda, yeah. And autophagy. Fasting drives it. Reducing overall metabolic stress with an easier-to-digest diet might free up resources to support that cleanup process even more effectively.
And the gut lining.
If fasting helps repair the gut barrier via autophagy, then following up with a diet low in potential irritants, that just supports the healing further. Plus, both fasting and these types of diets, usually lower in processed stuff, can help lower systemic inflammation.
This lines up perfectly with our anti-nutrients deep dive. Fasting in zero anti-nutrients. And it supports the fiber fallacy idea that maybe periods of low-no fiber are okay, even beneficial for some people, combined with lower fiber eating. Could be therapeutic.
It could. And ancestrally, think about it, periods of low plant food availability, maybe some hunting success. It could look something like this, combined with involuntary fasting.
But crucial point, not for everyone.
Absolutely not a universal prescription, targeted for metabolic resets, gut healing phases, or people who genuinely find they thrive long-term on these protocols. For many with robust guts, diverse fiber is still fantastic. It's about the right tool for the right person at the right time.
Okay, let's zoom in on autophagy again. Cellular cleanup, we keep mentioning it. How exactly does fasting turn it on, and what's the direct link to the gut lining and maybe even histamine?
Right, autophagy, self-eating. These are your cells housekeeping, breaking down old, damaged parts, proteins, organelles, recycling components, essential maintenance.
And fasting triggers it.
It's a primary trigger, yeah. Nutrient deprivation. When nutrients are low, a pathway called mTOR gets inhibited, and that basically unleashes autophagy.
Yeah.
Benefits are wide-ranging: cell renewal, clearing out junk, neuroprotection, immune effects.
So the gut lining specifically, how does autophagy help there?
The cells lining your gut turn over incredibly fast. Autophagy is vital for keeping them healthy and functional. It helps maintain the tight junctions, the seals between cells, prevents leaky gut.
Okay.
It also helps gut cells manage internal stress, like ER stress. And it can even help them clear out intracellular pathogens, like certain bacteria or viruses that get inside the cells.
So stronger barrier, healthier cells.
Exactly. Which, linking back to microbiome and mental health, means fewer inflammatory signals potentially leaking out and affecting the brain.
Makes total sense. Now, histamine, that connection seems less direct. How might autophagy play a role?
It's an emerging area, but fascinating. One idea involves mast cells, the big histamine releasers. Autophagy seems important for regulating mast cell function. If autophagy is sluggish in those cells, they might become overactive, degranulate too easily.
Ah, okay. So it's about keeping the mast cells themselves healthy.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Also, by reducing overall cellular stress and inflammation body-wide, autophagy might just lower the background noise that triggers histamine release in the first place.
Indirect effect.
Right. And while autophagy doesn't directly chew up histamine-specific enzymes, do that by improving overall cell health and reducing inflammation, it might support the efficiency of those histamine-clearing enzymes.
And the gut barrier link again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Stronger gut barrier thanks to autophagy means less stuff crossing over from the gut that could trigger mast cells lurking in the gut lining. Less triggering, less histamine release right there at the source. So it's a more fundamental approach than just blocking receptors.
Wow. Okay, so fasting is triggering some deep interconnected processes. It's clearly potent, which brings us back to the big question. Who actually benefits most, and who should be really careful?
And this is where context is key, is absolutely everything. Potential beneficiaries, definitely people with insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes if managed carefully, usually with a doctor.
Right.
Those looking for weight management support, especially if simple calorie cutting hasn't worked. People wanting to improve metabolic flexibility, maybe seeking cognitive benefits, focus. Some inflammatory conditions might respond well, and those specifically interested in activating autophagy.
Okay, a solid list of potential yeses.
Right.
What about the proceed with caution or maybe not list?
That list is just as important, maybe more so. Anyone with a history of eating disorders, big red flag. can trigger restriction.
Definitely.
Pregnant or breastfeeding women, nutritional needs are too high. People prone to hypoglycemia or with brittle diabetes, blood sugar drops are too risky. Those dealing with significant chronic stress, adrenal fatigue, fasting is another stressor, could make things worse. Worsen fatigue, anxiety, sleep, cortisol, maybe histamine issues too.
You covered that, yeah?
Thyroid issues, especially longer fasts, can suppress T3. Needs careful monitoring. Women with hormonal imbalances, irregular cycles, female physiology is sensitive to energy deficits. Can disrupt cycles, fertility. Doesn't mean no fasting ever, but needs care, maybe shorter windows are better tolerated.
Right, individual sensitivity.
Anyone on certain meds, blood pressure, diabetes meds, might need adjusting. Underweight individuals, those with nutrient deficiencies, serious athletes need careful planning around training.
So it really isn't something to just jump into based on a trend.
Not at all. And that ancestral context is key.
Right.
They likely fasted alongside rest, recovery, proper renourishment, not layered onto chronic sleep deprivation and modern stress.
Good point.
You have to listen to your body. Start slow, gentle TRF maybe. Recognize your own individual response. It's not one size fits all.
This has been incredibly thorough. Okay, let's try and synthesize. Main takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay, first, fasting is a real metabolic switch. It pushes you into ketosis, turns on autophagy. It's a physiological reset button, potentially. But second, you have to consider the modern context, your stress, your individual health. Don't just blindly apply an ancient practice. Third, hormones. Fasting impacts insulin, cortisol, thyroid, leptin, female hormones significantly. It's potent, can be therapeutic or a stressor depending on you.
Got it. What else?
Fourth, the gut. Fasting means profound gut rest. It can nudge the microbiome towards functional resilience, support the gut barrier via autophagy, big implications for histamine, gut-brain axis.
And the synergies?
Fifth, synergy is possible. Combining fasting thoughtfully with diets that also reduce metabolic stress, like lower anti-nutrient or sometimes lower fiber diets for sensitive people, can offer combined benefits. But again, targeted, not universal.
So, bottom line, powerful tool, use wisely, not a magic pill.
Exactly. It's a tool, not a panacea. The goal is to move beyond the hype. See it as one potential piece in your personalized health puzzle. Requires self-awareness, understanding your context.
Our aim really throughout this whole series is to give you that understanding, metabolic health, gut function, microbiome, so you can make informed choices for you.
That's it precisely. Empowering, informed choices.
Fantastic summary. It really brings it back to knowing yourself.
Indeed. And, maybe the most important thing about fasting isn't just the metabolic shifts, but the awareness it can bring. Your relationship with food, your body's actual signals. That heightened awareness might be the biggest benefit of all, something definitely worth exploring.